If you've ever watched a royal jewelry video and thought, that's not even the right tiara, this is for you. You've seen it happen. Someone uploads a 20-minute deep dive on the British royal collection, and within the first 90 seconds, they've shown an image of the completely wrong piece. The audio says one thing, the visual says another. And you're sitting there wondering if you've lost your mind or if the creator genuinely doesn't know the difference between two tiaras that look nothing alike. You're not crazy. They really are showing the wrong images that often. The comment sections tell the story. Corrections pile up. Frustrated viewers point out that no, Queen Mary didn't own that particular piece. Actually, it came through an entirely different bloodline. The creator either never responds or deletes the comment. The video stays up, errors intact, racking up views from people who don't know any better. And those of us who do? We just close the tab. Again. Here's what I'm going to do differently. Every single image in this video has been verified, not guessed at, not grabbed from a keyword search. Verified. And when I tell you where a piece came from, I'm going to tell you the actual provenance chain, because the real stories are almost always more interesting than the myths that lazy content has calcified into conventional wisdom. Let's start with the one that drives me absolutely insane. The Meander tiara, also called the Greek key tiara. You'll find it attributed to Queen Mary in video after video after video. Makes sense on the surface, right? Queen Mary acquired so many pieces during her lifetime that her name became synonymous with royal jewelry accumulation. She had tiaras the way some people have throw pillows. So when you see a diamond piece with a geometric Greek key pattern, the instinct is to file it under probably Queen Mary's collection. Except no. The Meander tiara has nothing to do with Queen Mary. The actual ownership chain runs through Greece and Battenberg, not through the British crown. Princess Alice of Battenberg received it as a wedding gift in 1903 when she married Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark in Darmstadt, Germany. She was 18 years old. The Greek key motif wasn't a random design choice. It was a deliberate nod to her new Greek royal family, one of the most recognizable symbols of classical Greek art, worked in diamonds across a bandeau-style frame. And then, Princess Alice lived one of the most extraordinary lives of any 20th century royal. The 1922 Greek Revolution forced her family to flee. Her husband was arrested and came within days of execution before international intervention saved him. She lived through periods of profound mental illness, spent time in sanatoriums, eventually found her calling in religious service, and founded a nursing order of Greek Orthodox nuns in Athens. During the Second World War, while Nazi forces occupied Greece, she sheltered a Jewish family in her home on Karanu Street, Rachel Cohen and 2 of her children. For this, she was posthumously honored at Yad Vashem as Righteous Among the Nations in 1993. Through revolution, exile, return, spiritual transformation. The Meander tiara remained among her possessions, a link to her youth and that brief moment as a princess bride before history intervened so dramatically. When Princess Alice died on December 5, 1969, she was living at Buckingham Palace, apartments provided by her daughter-in-law, Queen Elizabeth II, since 1967. Her jewelry passed to her son, Prince Philip. The pieces then entered the British royal collection as Philip's gift to Elizabeth. This is the provenance point that every lazy video misses. The Meander tiara came to Elizabeth II through her husband's maternal inheritance, through Princess Alice of Battenberg, not through Queen Mary, not through the traditional channels of British royal jewelry acquisition. Queen Mary, born Mary of Teck, wasn't even descended from Queen Victoria. She married into Victoria's family through her union with the future George V. She and Princess Alice shared no bloodline connection that would explain jewelry passing between them. When Princess Anne wore the Meander tiara to a state banquet in November 2019, she wasn't just wearing a pretty piece from the collection. She was wearing her grandmother's wedding tiara, a direct connection to Princess Alice's remarkable life. That emotional resonance, that narrative depth, is exactly what incorrect attribution strips away. The real story is better than the myth. It's almost always better than the myth. Speaking of myths that need dismantling, Diana and the Locked Vault. You've probably heard some version of this, that Diana was denied access to the really good pieces, that Queen Elizabeth hoarded the best tiaras and gave her daughter-in-law inferior options, that there was some kind of jewelry-based power struggle playing out through denial of diamonds. The actual situation was more complicated and more interesting than tabloid framing allows. First, you have to understand how royal jewelry lending actually works. The British Royal Collection contains pieces that belong to the Crown as institution, effectively state property held by the monarch in their official capacity. These aren't personal possessions to be given away or bequeathed. They pass automatically to each succeeding monarch. Then there are pieces that monarchs and family members own privately, which can be gifted, sold, or left to anyone they choose. The distinction matters enormously when discussing who gets to wear what. Diana entered the family on July 29, 1981, wearing her own family piece, the Spencer tiara. That stunning floral design had been in her father's family since the 1930s, assembled from various earlier pieces for Diana's grandmother, Lady Cynthia Spencer. This was Diana's to wear by family right, not by royal loan. The choice to wear a family tiara rather than a borrowed royal piece was notable in itself, establishing from the outset that Diana had her own jeweled heritage to draw upon. After her marriage, Diana gained access to certain collection pieces for official engagements. The Cambridge Lover's Knot became particularly associated with her, that extraordinary cascade of pearls suspended within diamond-encrusted arches, originally made for Queen Mary in 1914 by Gerard. The piece is rumored to give its wearers headaches due to its substantial weight. Diana apparently found this rumor accurate. She wore it repeatedly throughout the 1980s and into the 1990s. State opening of Parliament in November 1982. A banquet at Hampton Court in November 1988. A state visit to Hong Kong in November 1989. Photographs of Diana wearing the lover's knot remain iconic, but she didn't own it. It was a loan. The Queen Mary fringe tiara, the sunray-style bandeau that Elizabeth herself wore at her 1947 wedding, was loaned to Diana for the Canadian tour in June 1983. That's a significant gesture, given the piece's personal meaning to the Queen. The Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, Elizabeth's personal favorite, worn so frequently it became her signature, wasn't circulated because it was actively and regularly in use by the monarch herself. Not hoarding. Usage. Here's what Diana could not do. She couldn't treat loaned pieces as personal property, couldn't modify them, couldn't take them out of the country without permission and proper security arrangements, couldn't leave them to anyone in her will. These restrictions applied to all family members using collection pieces. They weren't special impositions on Diana. The timeline of Diana's jewelry use tracks with her changing role. Her last public wearing of the Cambridge Lover's Knot came in December 1992. The same month, the separation from Prince Charles was officially announced by Prime Minister John Major on December 9th. After the divorce was finalized on August 28, 1996, Diana returned all pieces that had been loaned from the collection. This wasn't punitive seizure. It was the natural consequence of her changed status. She was no longer making state visits requiring crown jewels, no longer in the line of succession that justified access to those particular symbols of royal continuity. She retained her personal jewelry, Pieces that had been genuine gifts to her, including a sapphire and diamond suite given as a Saudi Arabian wedding gift, along with her Spencer family inheritance. She wore these in her post-divorce public life until her death on August 31st, 1997. The more interesting questions aren't about what Diana was forbidden to wear. The interesting questions are about the choices she made within the system. How jewelry served as visual communication in her royal and post-royal life. But those questions require treating the subject with nuance instead of reaching for tabloid framing. Now, let's talk about the errors that make you want to throw your phone across the room. The Vladimir tiara presents perhaps the most common source of confusion. This magnificent piece, originally created for Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna of Russia around 1874, acquired by Queen Mary in 1921 through a private transaction with Princess Nicholas of Greece, features 15 interlocking diamond circles that can accommodate either pearl or emerald drops. The Grand Duchess's daughter, Elena Vladimirovna, had smuggled the jewels out of revolutionary Russia. Queen Mary's purchase was part of the broader phenomenon of émigré Russian royals selling family treasures to survive in exile. And Mary recognized both the opportunity and the humanitarian dimension of these acquisitions. The problem? Numerous similar-looking tiaras exist, various Kokoshnik-style pieces with geometric frames. Content creators regularly show images of related but distinct pieces while discussing the Vladimir specifically. The Grand Duchess's original Russian court setting. Other Romanov pieces now in private collections. Even modern reproductions, all appearing in videos purportedly about the British royal piece. Queen Elizabeth II typically wore the Vladimir with pearl drops for state occasions, but occasionally opted for the Cambridge emeralds, which were purchased separately and adapted to fit the frame in 1924. That versatility is part of the piece's legend. But getting the visual reference wrong defeats the entire point of discussing it. The Queen Mary fringe offers another identification challenge that reveals fundamental misunderstanding. This piece was created by Gerard in 1919, specifically for Queen Mary, using diamonds from a collet necklace that had been a wedding gift from Queen Victoria. The design draws inspiration from the Kokoshnik style, but it is entirely a British creation, not a Russian antique. Content repeatedly conflates this tiara with the Russian nuptial crown made in 1830 for Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna. Videos suggest Queen Elizabeth II wore some kind of Romanov relic at her 1947 wedding. She did not. The British fringe tiara is an homage to Russian aesthetics, not a Russian artifact. The 1830 Russian piece belonged to the Romanovs and followed an entirely different path through history. Confusing the two is exactly the kind of error that reveals a creator hasn't done basic research. Famously, a setting class broke on the morning of Elizabeth's wedding and had to be urgently repaired by the court jeweler. Princess Anne wore the same British-made piece at her 1973 wedding. Princess Beatrice wore it at her intimate 2020 ceremony. 3 generations of royal brides in the same tiara, and it's never been Russian. Multiple royal families possess fringe-style tiaras of broadly similar appearance: Greek, Spanish, Scandinavian. Images of all of them regularly appear in content purportedly about the British version. The distinguishing features require actual attention to identify correctly. The Cartier Halo Tiara. The piece Catherine, Princess of Wales, wore at her April 29, 2011 wedding gets confused with other Art Deco bandeau pieces from the same period. It was made by Cartier in 1936 for the then Duke of York to give to his Duchess. The design features a distinctive scroll motif with a central 16-pointed star surrounded by 739 brilliants and 149 baguette diamonds. Yet content regularly displays other Cartier pieces from the era. Other bandeau-style tiaras, even digitally manipulated composite images that match no historical piece at all. And then there's the absolute worst category of error: showing entirely wrong images while audio discusses a different piece altogether. This happens with striking frequency in hastily assembled content where creators match keywords to image databases without verification. A video discussing Queen Mary's Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, presented to the then Princess May of Teck in 1893 by a committee of girls from across Britain and Ireland as a wedding gift, might display imagery of her fringe tiara. A segment on the Cambridge Lover's Knot might show the similar-looking but distinct Delhi Durbar parure pieces. These are not subtle distinctions. They are as obvious as showing a photograph of a cat while discussing dogs. I want to address something else that comes up in comments. The challenge of, how do you know this? Because that's a fair question. Anyone can sound authoritative on the internet. Sir Hugh Roberts served as director of the Royal Collection and surveyor of the Queen's works of art. His book, The Queen's Diamonds, published in 2012 to coincide with Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee, remains the definitive scholarly source on the provenance of major pieces in the collection. Leslie Field's work on royal jewelry history provides additional documentation. Auction records from Christie's and Sotheby's establish provenance chains for pieces that have passed through sale at various points. The Royal Collection Trust maintains detailed documentation of pieces in their care. When I tell you where a piece came from, there's a paper trail. When lazy content attributes the Meander tiara to Queen Mary, they're just making assumptions based on her reputation as a collector. The actual records show something different. Provenance is a chain, and getting the links wrong matters. Queen Mary didn't commission the Vladimir tiara. She bought it, nearly 50 years after its creation, from Russian émigrés who needed funds desperately in the aftermath of revolution. That distinction matters for understanding the piece's history. Pieces can be gifts, purchases, inheritances, conversions from other forms, or assembled from components with different origins. Collapsing these categories produces exactly the kind of sloppiness that erodes credibility. When someone says a piece was commissioned by a royal, but it was actually purchased by or inherited by, that's not pedantic quibbling. That's getting the story wrong. The pearl drops on the Vladimir are original to the parure. The cabochon emerald alternatives were acquired later. When Princess Anne chooses between them for an engagement, she's making a styling decision within the history of the piece. When Catherine wears the Cartier halo, she's wearing Art Deco British craftsmanship, not some generic old tiara. When the Queen wore her Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara so frequently it became her signature, she was wearing a piece given to her grandmother by thousands of British and Irish citizens who donated pennies to fund it. Every piece has a story. The story is always better than, Queen Mary had a lot of jewelry. You already knew most of this. That's why you're still watching. You've noticed the errors. You've left the corrections in comments that got ignored. You've closed tabs in frustration when yet another creator showed the wrong image while confidently explaining provenance they clearly didn't research. I see you. I know you've noticed. The Meander tiara belonged to Princess Alice of Battenberg, a woman who sheltered Jews from Nazis and founded a religious order and survived revolution and exile. Not Queen Mary. The Cambridge Lover's Knot was loaned to Diana, not given. The Queen Mary fringe is British, not Russian. The Vladimir was purchased in 1921 from desperate émigré royals selling family treasures to survive. These aren't obscure corrections. They're basic accuracy. And the fact that getting them right feels novel tells you everything you need to know about the state of royal content. I'd ask what errors you've spotted that still bother you, what misattributions keep showing up in your recommended videos, what pieces deserve their real stories told instead of the lazy versions that keep getting repeated. Because this is just the beginning. Subscribe for more stories like this.